Hello, everyone. Welcome to Chasing a Murderer. And today we're going to do part 2 of Interesting Facts in the Suzanne Morphew case. Suzanne Morphew and her husband, Barry Morphew, 55, had recently moved to Colorado. She has 2 children, 2 daughters, and she goes missing May 10th, 2020, suddenly. After a long and intense investigation, Barry Morphew, her husband, had murder charges filed against him, and that prosecution was later dropped because prosecution was sweating whether or not they had enough evidence, especially since they hadn't recovered Suzanne's remains. After all, these are murder charges. Nearly 3 years later, police have discovered the remains that they've been looking for so long. They actually stumbled upon Suzanne Morphew's remains after searching for another missing woman. Suzanne Morphew was discovered in a shallow grave just 50 miles away from their home. Now, this actually caused the Colorado Bureau of Investigation to announce a launch in a new tip line for information related to this 2020 disappearance. Now they had an area to kind of target for witnesses that might have seen something that night. So what are forensic analysis saying about, what shape her remains are going to be in and how can they help or hurt the case? One forensic expert following this case said the condition of her remains makes it unlikely, at least, that her husband Barry Morphew would be able to clear his name, while others are saying, well, the lack of soft tissue and DNA would make it very difficult to prosecute Barry. Till this day, Barry Morphew is the number one suspect in this case. There was one other at the very beginning, which was the man that Suzanne was having an affair with, but he's been cleared and had an alibi. Now, just because prosecutors dismissed this case with no prejudice, it doesn't mean that they can't rearrest Barry Morphew, because prosecutors can decide that if they have enough evidence to prosecute Barry, then they can rearrest him and recharge him. Normally, in a case like this, we look at the children involved and feel sad for their losses. Most times, in cases like this, the children involved with these cases have lost not only one parent, but 2 parents. One being an innocent victim, the other a guilty monster. But Suzanne's daughters, 2 adults, have been supporting their father, Barry Morphew, 1,000% from the beginning. For them, Barry has done no wrong. So today, Barry is out of jail, walking around free, and have his daughter on each arm. They just don't see the monster that the world sees. Instead, they see Barry as an innocent man, an innocent father who is another victim. But over time, looking over the affidavit and, now that they found Suzanne's remains, it makes it a little bit harder to see Barry as an innocent man. So let's pretend that Barry Morphew is guilty beyond any reasonable doubt. Imagine what it would take to have something like this happen in your household, and then to deceive your children. It would take huge self-admiration, one who acts in one's own interests without any regard to how his actions could impact others. So let's pretend we have the family in one room. We place 1 crumb of bread in front of the Morphew family, and they're all starving. That crumb of bread is the only thing that could save them. Barry would wait for his family to fall asleep, scarf it down, then blame his sleeping wife. So not only did all of his family die and didn't get that piece of bread, he would blame his dying wife to keep his dying girls on his side. So if Barry is responsible for the demise of his wife, that would be the ultimate selfish. And really, the people following this case, that is who they believe Barry Morphew to be. That man that would steal the last crumb from his starving family. I mean, think about it. These girls are hugging him, they're supporting him, they love him. And if he's guilty, he's doing this to his own children without any regrets. And they're crying right in front of him, and this doesn't seem to matter. In fact, Barry Morphew is suing the prosecutors for slandering his reputation, and he's seeking $15 million. And you have to think about, if he wins, who else wins? Well, his daughters. And man, is that irony. If he is guilty, he will have chances to become very wealthy while getting away with murder. Okay, let's go ahead and start getting into these facts. Number one, investigators found male DNA on the glove box. Where did they find this? Well, they found it inside his wife's car, which they would claim they found a DNA profile. And so it was actually connected to 3 unsolved sexual assault cases in different states. So that just doesn't make sense, but that's what they're saying. These places were Chicago, Phoenix, and Tempe. Now, what I found strange about this is I didn't hear anything if they had found Barry Morphew's DNA in his wife's car. Considering that they're married and at some point would have been touching that car, where is his DNA? For defense, this is a plus for them, but in a prosecutor's eyes, wouldn't you think that the lack of DNA in her car, the man that lives with her, shouldn't that be a problem? Make sure to share your comments below. So, fact 2. Suzanne was found 2023, buried about 50 miles approximately away from their home in Salida, Colorado. She's found in a shallow grave. If she had been there since the day she was reported missing or the day before that, this would mean that her remains were exposed to some pretty harsh elements. According to what we're learning right now, is they say that it was lacking tissues. And if it's lacking tissue, and most likely this will be an important piece of the puzzle missing when it comes to investigating how she might have died. This means transferred DNA that might be able to tell you that they could have scraped from underneath her nails, from where you see pictures of Barry Morphew having these scratches on his arm. You know, fingernails are one of the last things to go, so maybe they will be able to find some DNA evidence underneath her nails. It really depends, because we're hearing that it's possible that the grave was scavenged and that several pieces of her remains were kind of scattered about. So what could trace evidence do? Well, depending on what they believe, like they've mentioned sexual assault, DNA profile, could she have been sexually assaulted by someone else? Well, that's going to be kind of hard for them to find that unless they find some kind of clothing, and they're lucky. Will this exclude Barry Morphew from being a suspect? No. Now, we've heard about Barry Morphew being accused of carrying a gun, possibly the last day that Suzanne was alive, and it might have been a tranquilizer gun. If her death happened because of a tranquilizer gun, well, that's going to be something they would have to be able to look into more of the tissue, like her liver and other things like that, which will be nearly impossible to do if it seems so. I mean, we don't know what they recovered. Then you have the fact that they can look for things that are more physical. So maybe damage to the bone, to the skull. If she was shot or if she was beat with something, looking for fractures to the skull, looking for lacerations in the bone. And you can bet, after what prosecutors have been through right now, I mean, I've heard there's talk about switching prosecutors. So after what they've been through with this case, they're going to have to dot their I's and cross their T's. And if they bring charges again against Barry, they're going to have to be very confident and sure that they are ready. Let's move on to the next fact. When do prosecutors believe that Suzanne Morphew might have died? They believe that it might have been May 9th, the day before Mother's Day. So Suzanne, she sends a selfie to her lover, Jeff Libler, in between 2 and 2:07 that day. From then, Suzanne Morphew doesn't answer any of her messages that her lover sends only minutes after she had sent that selfie. This would probably be some of the most damaging evidence for Barry Morphew. Somewhere near this time, Barry claims that he was running around with a gun, and shortly sometime during this time, too, he puts his phone on airplane mode. Who does this? Who puts their phone on airplane mode during the exact same time frame that his wife quits texting Jeff? She kind of falls off the map, and here you have Barry Morphew doing some pretty sketchy things. And there are a few things that also prosecutors bring to light, and that's the fact that Suzanne Morphew was actually quite active on her phone. She had actually texted or messaged Jeff 59 times. We know that Jeff didn't get a response from Suzanne sometime after 2:40. And Barry, who was out running errands, sent Suzanne a text around 2:26 p.m. telling her that he was on his way home. Prosecutors believe that Barry returned home shortly after he texted her, and that's when he took the life of his wife, which his timeline matches up with that perfectly. So now the prosecutors are going to have to try to put together a timeline and go over the GPS information again to correspond with where they found the remains of Suzanne, when he went to Denver, and several other places like stopping to drop off trash. You got to remember that Barry went to Denver quite early, May 10th, on Mother's Day. This seemed to be something that he decided to do suddenly. And then later on, we all know the story where some of the people that were helping him work on that job go into his hotel room where they said they smelled an overwhelming amount of bleach. If this is true, why would he need that kind of bleach? And especially right after his wife disappears. So what prosecutors and investigators collected on Suzanne's phone and Barry's is going to be quite important. And the fact that he turned his phone on airplane mode during the exact same hours that Suzanne supposedly goes silent. Okay, let's share some subscriber comments. So S. Willie, yeah, it's solved to a degree. Just need to get the evidence together. Hopefully the GPS data can tie Barry to the body location, unless the body was moved, and hopefully the autopsy will give more details to pin him down. Thank you, Willie, for sharing. Next is Alley Cat. Hey, Allie. The prosecutor did something wrong with the search warrant of the house. I've heard investigators made a few mistakes. Thanks, Allie, for sharing. Mary Morningstar says, I heard that the judge felt that the prosecutors needed to be punished. I heard something like that. What I heard was the prosecutors did make a few mistakes, but it wasn't something that could really hurt the case. But I also haven't been able to keep up with that part of it, so if you know something, share it below. It's so great to see you. Thanks so much for sharing. 3 cadaver dogs hit on a bobcat. Remember, the neighbor heard the bobcat sometime in the night. One dog actually got in the seat of the bobcat and signaled. Hold on, Barry, it's coming. Allie's got a lot of interesting facts to share. Thanks, Allie, so much for taking time to comment and share with us. Next is Tony Rickett. It's gonna be Barry. So Tony knows without a doubt that it's gonna be Barry. A lot of people feel that way. I mean, they just really think that Barry is responsible for whatever happened to Suzanne. I mean, it's a perfect motive there. There's perfect everything. I mean, the way that it happened, it seems impossible that it's not Barry, doesn't it? Next is my girl, Journey to Justice. She says, now we can join the dots. Connections and locations. We already have the connections and the locations. The thing is who said she, Suzanne, went for a bike ride? Barry. What about that silly note he left at the local store? It made no sense to anyone. And that's true because really, he made it seem as if Suzanne was an avid bike rider, but what we're learning is this was a new hobby that she was taking on. I think we covered that note. What was it? Yeah, that's probably what you're talking about, isn't it? On the last upload, so part 1 of the interesting facts of Suzanne Morphew. It was really creepy how he went into that store and his demeanor was not that of really wanting to find his wife. It was just some kind of act. That's what it seemed like. And the girls, it's just really shocking to me that the daughters are kind of 100% supporting their father. I mean, I think there's some kind of doubt in their mind. They just aren't sharing it with the world. Just make sure, guys, you share your thoughts below because on part 3 of Suzanne, where we talk about these interesting facts, I want to share comments by you guys. I was a bit in a hurry today, but just make sure, please, to share some of our missing girls' faces like Jasmine Robinson right here. They don't have any answers for their family. We're still waiting for police to bring on, a stronger investigation. Find something. We need tips for these people. That's what we need. Most times when these cases go quiet, police are waiting for that one tip. It's that one tip that just gets everything going in the direction it needs to go. I love you guys. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys hopefully soon.